Okay, so today we're going to start on Daf Nun, page 50A. Start from Al-Kazayas Mace, Al-Kazayas Netzel, olive size of the corpse. Okay, it's a shame that we're able to learn Torah every day. Because of our learning, we should have this in Mikdash immediately. Starts like this. Talking about the Nazir having to restart his camp. Where exactly is it? It's about I don't know, 11 lines down from the top. The Nazir has to recount his Nazirus if he becomes tummy. Now, what are the things that would make him tummy? So we had a whole list of things. So of course, if he's in contact with the corpse, he would become tummy. But the Mishnah added in that if he comes in contact with the kazayas of the corpse, like an olive size of the corpse, of the flesh of the corpse, or if he comes in contact with an olive size of the disintegrated corpse, dissolved flesh of the corpse. So the Gemara says, Vezo netzel. What is netzel? Which we translated as the dissolved flesh of the corpse. The word netzel is like the shirish of Hatzalah, which means to separate or to save. But here we're talking about separating, right? It means like to move it aside. So
I thought it was another acronym for parts, that there's bones and
no, it's not. It's a what do you call it? It's this verb that's turned into a noun. It's the what's separated. What has been separated is now separated. Is now the separated. So it's this netzel. What is this netzel? So we said that it's the flesh of the corpse that dissolved, and then shenikrash, that became congealed. The word dissolved is missing from the text, but I think it's supposed to be self-understood. But then it was congealed afterwards. So the flesh then congealed. This would be like talking about human flesh here, right? We're talking about the impurity that comes off from human. No, this would be like if it dissolved and came back, it would be like a what's it called? Like no, I don't want to use a food term. With our food term, but it's a what's it called?
Reincarnated the wrong way.
What are they? Well, it's like a gelatin, Umayel shehirtiach. And mayel is a liquid that comes out, the fluids that come out of the body. Now here we're talking about that it's not the other fluids that come out of the body. It has to be from the actual flesh itself that was heated up and then would congeal as well. That's
So
the
is that
assumption. Now,
the blood?
could be something in the blood. I don't know.
Because we're not talking about saliva.
No, saliva and other fluids are going to be pure because that's not really part of the body. Hey Chidami, what's the case? If you're not sure if it comes from the corpse, which means probably if you're not sure if it's the saliva, the other fluids, bodily fluids, or if it's the flesh itself. So kikarish mahavi. So what's the difference that it congealed? If it congealed, you still don't know what it is. So it must be that we know that this is not those other bodily fluids. This is the actual flesh itself. So afagav leikar. So then why does it need to congeal? Well, what's the point? What are you trying to get at? Rabbi Yirmiyah bistam. Yirmiyah says that we're not sure. It's just stam. Ikarish mayalhu. Leikarish dil makichavenehu. Use your pencil for a second. if it congeals, then we say it's actually from the body. But if it's like karish, if it doesn't congeal, then we say that it's those other fluids that are there. The commentators have a question that what did Rabbi Yirmiyah just do? He just like sort of repeated the question and made it look like he said an answer. Where did I see the commentaries discussing this? I'm not sure where I saw that.
Well, he took the question, turned it into an answer, saying before, in other words, now we're saying if it's Natzel, then we had a questionable substance. Is it this or is it that? If it congealed, if it's Natzel, then it's definitely Tumas Mason. Is that if it's not Natzel? Before at the beginning we asked the question of, I think, like, is it mucus or is it Natzel?
Right.
So now, so it was just a question, A or B. Now we're saying, oh, if it's B, then it definitely.
I guess what Rabbi Yirmiyah is saying is that that if it congeals, the only thing that congeals is the natzel, and the mucus would not congeal. Like that's what it looks like. That's what Rabbi Yirmiyah is doing.
You can see
Okay.
Water soluble or just there's no fat.
Okay. Well, boy minei Abaya miraba. Abaya asked Rabba the following question. Abaya is a student of Rabba. It says like this. We've been talking about a Nazir here that's becoming Tameh because he was in the wrong place, after some sort of, I don't know, some scene, crime scene or something, becomes Tameh. Abaya has another question. Yesh netzel behema, ye netzel behema. If there's an animal, a dead animal, that gives off impurity, it's called tumas nevela. Now, it would only give off that impurity from touching it or carrying it, but not from entering into the room with it, right? It doesn't give off impurity like the corpse. You have to actually real contact with it. Well, let's say it congealed. Yeah, but not a Nazir. Not that a Nazir would have to shave his head and restart. This is in contact with the animal carcass. It gives off tuma, which would affect, he would have to go to the mikvah, like that sort of thing. But not that he has to wait 7 days and get sprinkled the red pepper. So it's a much lesser tuma, but it's still there. So the question is, what about netzel from a carcass of an animal? By a human corpse, there is netzel. Netzel is this dissolved liquid, that recongealed. What about by an animal? Miyamrina, do we say Gemiri netzel dasmi adam, that we've only have a tradition that the impurity comes from this dissolved and congealed fluid that comes from a corpse, human corpse, but not that comes from an animal. Maybe there's no difference. This is Abaya is asking an innocent question to Rabbah. How does it work? No, the question wasn't if it's going to physically dissolve or congeal. Oh, you're asking.
Do we know why the human is
more impure? Yeah, I guess the soul is stronger by a human. When the soul leaves, it leaves an impurity much more than by an animal. When the animal soul leaves, it doesn't leave the same impurity. Yeah.
And the animal could be any kind. It doesn't have to be a kosher animal or not kosher.
I believe so. I believe it doesn't matter.
If I walk, someone touches a dog that's lying in the street, or a beaver, or a possum,
right?
Will that occur?
I think that it gives off a tama, it's an avela, and it doesn't matter for anything practical today.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No. Even in the Nazir.
even a Nazir, right?
So you can pick up the dead possums and bury them.
Yeah, without being affected by it. Right?
Yeah.
Goodness. Yeah. Someone's got to pick them up.
There isn't any restrictions or anything when someone like gets an aliyah or something. So is there any tumah there, or is that completely like no?
When someone goes to the Torah, you mean because there was the tumah that was on the scrolls?
No,
Was it
if
rabbinic
you're
tumah?
tameh.
Oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I think in Shulchan Aruch it says even a woman that's a nida is allowed to touch the Torah scroll. I think it said that. Yeah. And there may be a custom that they don't, if they have the flow, that they don't gaze at the Torah. That's a custom. I think the actual halacha is that's not a yeah. That's the only tumah today that would be relevant. I mean, unless you're going on the Temple Mount. We don't do it anyway.
Question on the commentary said because the Neshama left that body, he left the greater tumor there.
Right.
So when Hashem removed his Shekhinah from, let's say, Illinois,
Right. Right.
Well, I think it was that place to become
Right.
Right. That's not the answer.
I'm acknowledging the question.
Is there an answer? Is it a
It doesn't
question?
leave it as dead. That's the thing. It wasn't the vitality of the place, of the object. Here, the soul leaves it takes the life out of it. Then there's nothing left.
Literally,
Right?
on this answer.
Now there's a discussion regarding the holy places in Israel.
And in Megillah.
If it's exactly. If yeah, very good. If the kedusha the kedusha of Israel is still there after the destruction, the discussion. It doesn't have to be re-sanctified. There's two opinions. I'm sure there's a conclusion, but I didn't. In the Gemara, it's a discussion. Okay. The Gemara. So this is a biased question. When the Gemara over here says hanicha, it's good. What it means is that according to one opinion, we don't have this question. The question was, do we have netzel, which is this dissolved flesh of the animal, to give off impurity? So there is an opinion that holds like this. We have two stages of something becoming rotten. Could rot to the extent that it's not fit for human consumption. It could rot to the extent that it's not fit for animal consumption, not fit for a dog. Okay? And we see these two things in halacha. And it's based on the pasuk. It says that the nevela that you have in your midst, you should give it to the non-Jew that's living amongst you, right? The ger toshav, because he's a ger toshav. Ger toshav is a convert that didn't accept all the mitzvahs. He just accepts not to worship idols, and he's able to live in Israel. Like a Noahide, yeah. So he doesn't have to keep kosher. So he's allowed to eat that animal that wasn't shechted. The animal that wasn't shechted, he's allowed to eat it. It was shot, right? It was hunted. So he's allowed to eat that. So it says you give it to him. Now, the Gemara learns from that what's considered a nevela, only something that would be worthy of giving to this stranger that's amongst you. That means that's fit for human consumption. If it's not fit for human consumption, then it's not even considered a nevela and it won't give off impurity. So if that's the case, that it has a higher level of a higher standard, that it only gives off impurity if it's fit for human consumption, then once the flesh dissolves, that obviously means it went rotten.
Right.
So it's not a question anyway, because once it goes rotten, it doesn't give off tumah. So if you say that when it comes to the strict tumahs, which is relatively strict tumah. The tumah of nevela, it's the qualification of that is that it has to be fit for human consumption. Otherwise, it's not considered a nevela. Then we're not going to have a question. It's for tumah kala, for other types of tumah, lighter tumahs, tumah seichlan, food that becomes tameh. So that would give off a tumah if it's until it's not fit for a dog. Any food, other foods besides for nevela, the carcass, that would be tameh. We have this also by chametz, I think. See, when is it not considered chametz? When it's not royal achilas kelev. When a dog, when it's not fit for shoe polish or something, it may have, I don't know what it's made of. The animal carcass, according to one opinion, is only when it's fit for human consumption. If that's the case, then we don't have a biased question. What about netzel? Because netzel is obviously not fit for human consumption. But according to the other opinion that says, even for animal carcass, the criteria of that is that it's fit for a dog to eat. So then even if it's rotten, dogs could eat rotten food. They eat the leftover stuff that's no one else is going to eat, even if it's spoiled. What is that?
Have a better immune
They have
system.
better immune system. So then Abaya has a real question. So Maya Klamema, what's going to be the answer to that? So Tashima, come and listen. Now we're talking about Nevela Seiftar. We're talking about a bird, a kosher bird that was not shechted. Now it gives off an impurity. So if it was dissolved in fire, then it's tameh. Fire and dissolved in fire means overheat, right? It was cooked up, not burnt, just dissolved.
Not burnt, but dissolved.
Yeah, but it's not a soup with water because then that would be diluted. This would be like on a low temperature, that it
Be
just
melted.
like all the liquid, it turns into like a liquid,
Was it chef?
not shechted. So it's nevela seiftar. It gives off impurity, special impurity, and it's only when a person swallows it. It's a unique halacha. But it would give off this tumah if it was dissolved in fire. However, bechama, it gives off, if it dissolves in the sun, then that's going to be pure. Now, the assumption here, why is it pure if it dissolves in the sun? When something dissolves in the sun, is it rots, right? That's when you get all of the food poisoning. If you leave things out, it's sitting in the sun or whatever. So,
But before it rots. Can we learn?
Yeah,
with
that
Shabbos,
would be-
Or in Shabbos, it talks about you put an egg outside.
Right.
And it gets cooked.
that's because the heat in Arizona, that egg that's in the sand is going to cook, and that the tea, that the sun tea,
Sun tea.
right? So that's that. But here we're talking about where you left it in the sun in New York, and it just goes bad. It doesn't cook. Right? Okay. So if you say that the only time that it's not going to be a nevela is if it's not fit for a dog, then even in the sun it should be tameh. Why are you telling me in the sun it's tahar, it's pure, if it was dissolved in the sun? Because you're telling me that it's rotted and it's not fit for human consumption, but it's still fit for dogs. Okay. It's very interesting, this Gemara, because the Gemara seems to be asking on that opinion. What it really wants to tell me is not that it's challenging the opinion that holds that tumah is until it's not edible for a dog, until it's not fit for dog consumption. That's not what it's really asking. What it's really telling me is that obviously the answer is that netzel is not going to be tameh, because when it dissolves in the sun, it's tar. That means netzel by an animal is tar. According to that opinion, that was your only question, was according to that opinion. So here we go. According to that opinion, it's tar. Gemara answers, Emas mamchila, when does it dissolve? Basid the asrach b'chama, once it's becomes spoiled in the sun. Even the asrach havaliyah, for once it dissolves, it becomes like dirt. and it's not, what the Gemara means to say is that it's not even fit for a dog. So therefore, you have no proof from here of regarding netzel by an animal, because what you're left with, the only example that you could find was something that wasn't even fit for a dog. So therefore, it's going to be tahar anyway, regardless of if it's netzel or not. It's tahar because it's spoiled for even for a dog. Okay. The Gemara doesn't give us an answer here. The Gemara goes on to a new topic. Tanan. I had a good question. Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah. Kol anitzak tar. This is talking about you have two pots. Props. Okay. So what we're talking about is this is tahar and this is tameh. I pour from the tahar into the tameh. Now, question, if the tameh food here can travel up the flow and make this tameh.
I think so. The question with more than one pipes.
That could be.
He wants to.
Could be. So the question is, does the tumah travel upward along the flow and make everything here? If this is called nitzuk. Nitzuk means a flow. And the question is, does the flow
There's a
contract?
connection there for sure. The thing is that it's only going one way.
The only one
But
looks like it's going.
You
Yeah.
want to
The
turn
tumor.
Yeah, but it's considered a
connection into ACD.
Usually goes back.
I've heard of some.
Right.
Yeah.
It grows from the roots.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the thing, but based off how much pipes.
There was a question when you have the kasha, the end of the force. We're not talking about taking out the finisher, but because the sink might have had unkosher stuff or humstick, and the
goes
water
back
will
up.
pour in,
Mhm.
did it make your faucet? And I think the must have
Uh-huh.
or machlokes. But
So,
probably there's-
there is a difference between if the bottom is hot, if the top is hot, if the bottom, if they're both hot or they're both cold, there is some differences there. Okay. It's not like this. Kol hanitzuk tar. All pouring is tar. Okay, does not travel upwards. Does not. Chutz midvash hazifim, except for honey that comes from the place called zifim, or this also could be just a thick type of honey. Zifim could mean that they have to add water to it because it's so thick. Molasses, right? Thick as molasses. That was the expression. Vatzapiches, or it's a honey in the comb, which is also very thick. So we're talking about here that this is not just a pour. This is like sort of like where as you pour it over, if that's still attached, that's
a bridge.
like a bridge. That's more than just a pour. It's like a solid almost. Okay. Shammai says it's more strict. He says, "Afa mikveh shel grisin v'shel pour mipnei shisei ledas lachra." This is something that when you pour it, when you're going like this and you stop pouring, you have these pieces that come back up. What do you call them?
Oh,
It's not a splash. We're talking about that
that's only the case with like this very, very viscous.
substances that will disconnect from the bottom and come back up to the top.
Really? As he's pouring it from the top to the bottom?
He pours it. When he stops pouring it, things plop back up.
Really, they just pop up.
Not pop up. They
Or
were
they climb up.
the strings that were pouring down
Uh-huh.
that didn't fall all the way
Yeah.
will end up coming back.
Do they really go up, or do they just separate that which has still more like suction from above goes back, and that which is from longer, in other words, does it just become a separation? Why do you say that which is below is now going back up? I would think, when you stretch something like that, you get to a point that it gets so thin, it's separated.
So if it doesn't get that thin,
So
so
it has to get momentarily thin in the sense that if something's come back up, you can't have a bigger thing here.
right,
By gravity, it
Right,
doesn't make sense.
right. So we're talking about is that as it goes down, so it gets thinner on the bottom, right? It's of course thicker on the top, right? And it's going down, it gets thinner on the bottom. Then you say, okay, no more. And then you pull it back, you turn the cup back like this. And then all of those things fall back in.
Oh, spaghetti, like liquid spaghetti.
Yeah, yeah. It's like the bridge disconnects and then the bridge is.
But that's what I'm saying. The stuff from the bottom.
Not the stuff from the
It's
bottom.
separate.
Not the stuff from the bottom. The stuff from the bottom was on the bottom already. This is possibly contacted the bottom and still goes back up.
Like where the bridge separated.
Because we know if it's separated right at the
Right.
bottom.
After it touches it, it already goes back up. So
That brings the tumor back
So,
up.
so Beishamai says that this will extend the tumah back into the original pot. Now, what are we talking about over here? This is a stew that's made out of split peas or other types of legumes.
Mm.
It has, I like it, Sean. It has it's called ririn. Ririn is like the saliva that like comes. I don't know. Drool,
I was thinking I didn't want to say
like
that.
drooling.
Kids do that.
This rearing is like drooling or something. Okay. So this was an introduction to what we're about to talk about. Nitzuk, talking about nitzuk, that according to the Tanakama, it has to be quite thick for it to be considered to give off, to contract tumah to the original, to the upper pot. And according to Beishamai, it's less than that. Now, boy, Rami Bar Chama has a question. Rami Bar Chama is a contemporary of Abaya. Says like this: Yesh nitzuk loichlen, ayin nitzuk loichlen. We were talking before about types of liquids. What about if you're pouring onto a food on the bottom? What was on the bottom in the first case? Nothing. Doesn't have to do with the Nazir. We got into Tumah now, and we're going to discuss Tumah for the next few days. And we're into, yeah, that's what's happening. So if you're going to pour on top of food,
They didn't have that.
do we say that this will not have any, this is just like a clump, right? So it's not going to have any strings. See, are you pouring food or you're pouring a liquid? What is it? How does it say it in the English? You're pouring a solid? If one pours melted food into impure vessel, does the food which one is pouring become impure? I guess, okay, we're talking about that here, it's going to be in a way similar to the honey that the Tanakama held that that becomes impure. So what Rami Bar Chama is asking, what's the real reason for the Tanakama? Is the reason for the Tanakama because honey has those strings that will come back into the original container? The honey less for rear, but this sort of dissolved food will not have those strings. It will just pour right out. Maybe not as thick, or it's a different type of viscosity. Or maybe it was because of the thickness. And the thickness itself creates a bridge that connects the tumah. And here, this is also thick. So what is it? Is it because of the strings, or is it because of the thickness. If it's because of the thickness, then we would say the same thing by dissolved foods.
I think we're not mutually exclusive.
Not
You
mutually
want to have
exclusive.
strings. It needs to be thick.
Right. But it doesn't mean that if it's thick, it has string. The honey is a good example. Whenever you pour honey, there's always like that little bit left. That's why the top of the container is always sticky.
Thinking about on Pesach, not Pesach.
On Rosh Hashanah.
when, you pour the honey out.
Yeah, it's always going down the bottle. The other that string, the last right.
Good to the
Compared
last
to like a
string.
What is that?
Very different compared to like a soup. Soup is kind of like water.
Right.
So
It's
when
not going to come back. Right.
Once you put it over, like,
Right. But
Like
here we're
soup
talking
is-
about even a thicker soup. Let's say we're talking about a split pea soup or something. Well, mikveh shel grisen, I think, is even thicker than that. Mikveh shel grisen that Beis Shammai spoke about is like a porridge. That's going to be thicker than a soup. But here we're talking about a thick soup that doesn't have those strings.
You bring some in.
Next session.
Your wife make a porridge too. It's so thick that when you pour it, and when you pour it back, it really comes back.
It
with you.
sounds like.
Like the
children
oatmeal.
have their own Shabbos. It's
Yeah.
almost like a soup, but because it's not solid, you can't really pour. it, but you
Right.
could maybe pour it. I mean, it's
I think the honey is just like the perfect example for that.
Right.
I can't think of anything else.
Right. Dama Rava. Rava says, let's take a case and let's see if we can answer the question. Tashima, come and listen. Chelev hames shu shalim. Fat of a corpse that is complete. That means that there was a chunk of fat that was just like removed from the corpse. Biticho, and it's being boiled up. This must be in a laboratory or something. Well, because there's a kazayas of that fat in one place, so that fat gives off tumah. Kazayas of a mace, tameh. Hayya mafurad. Let's say it was chopped into pieces, bitichu, and then you boiled it up, then it's tar. Now the reason why this is going to be tar is because you need to have a kazayas of the mace of the corpse that was originally one kazayas. You can't take a piece of this, a piece of the corpse from here, a piece of there, and collect it into a kazayas. That's not going to work. Now, the truth is that it's not so simple, because we said before that if you have two corpses and there's a revius of blood from both of them, this is a corpse, a mace, I think. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Sounds cannibalistic.
It's being heated for whatever reason. It's fat. I don't know. Now, so we said before that the blood that comes from two corpses combines to a revius and will give off tumah in a house. Now we're saying that if you're trying to a combining of pieces of a corpse, like with human intervention, done by a human, is not considered a combination. It's not considered combined. Why do we say by the blood that it is? So this Taisus talks about, and
This reminds me of what we discussed yesterday, that it had to be like a certain size and the majority of the bones.
right,
And then the first opinion before that, it was just a certain size.
right. Well, over here Taisus answers that that's talking about being tummy in an ayhel, being tummy because you're entering into under the same roof as it. So we say that is always considered connected because it's under the same roof, so that we can combine. But when you're talking about touching something, and it has to be a certain size, and the only way that it's the right size is because some other person put them two together, that's not considered put together. So if there's pieces of fat that were put together, and even though they were boiled up, it's not considered that it's connected because it was connected by a human, a person connected them. Okay, so there's other questions here. Okay. What's the point of this? If it would enter your mind, that there's no such thing as connecting food through pouring. So
Wow.
shalim v'tichanam litar. So even if it's whole, if someone took a kazayas of the fat of a corpse, put it into a pot and boiled it, but the way when something boils is that it mixes around and it bubbles up. So that means that it was disconnected and reconnected. So if you say that it's considered nitzuk, it's attached, so fine, so it's attached. But if you say that it's not attached, then it was already disconnected and then it was reconnected. That shouldn't be considered. I mean, everything was originally connected in the body, and you said if you take different parts of it and connect it, it doesn't work. So it must be that we say nitzuk, that the pouring or the dissolved liquids, right, that are still considered attached, considered a connection. So we seem to have an answer for Rami Bar Chama that there is nitzuk for eichon. What it means is a food that was dissolved. Here it's fat that was dissolved. Amar Abzeira. Abzeira says, Ana. Is it possible that this is not human fat? Is it possible that this is the animal fat? What does it say in English? If it's not dealing with the human, then it would explain something, because then I would have a clear difference between the revius of blood, because that was a human corpse and that gives off tumah in the oil, versus this is an animal corpse, which gives off. The word corpse used for an animal? Or is
No,
it-
the carcass.
It was used for carcass. Yeah, so it must be a human. Okay, so then what would be the difference between the revius and this? The difference is that the revius we're talking about, then it was under one roof. And here we're talking about where it's not under one roof. There is no roof. So you're just touching it. When it comes to touching it, it has to be originally connected and not reconnected afterwards. The Gemara answers, Reb Zeira says, I know my brother Ravina to givna. But I and Mar, the son of Ravina, we translate what this Mishnah or Brisa, what this is referring to is Kigayin, Achamai Skin. What are we dealing with? Kigayin, for example, the Bahadi the Mirtachle, once it was boiled up, Salak Amuda the Nura Lapumi the Man of Vikarash, you remove the fire. You know what it means, from the opening of the mouth, or opening of the vessel, and then it congealed. I think what it means is that you didn't let it boil all the way, you just let it melt. And then it's recongealed, so that way it didn't move around. So it still is in its original constitution. Yeah.
The column of fire goes to come underneath.
And what does that do?
The fat congealed there. It was all present together, so there was no stream
It doesn't move around.
Yeah, but the way that the Gemara is describing it is Salik Amuda Denura Lapume Demana. The pillar of fire went up to the mouth of the vessel. I don't know what that does. What does it do when it goes to the mouth of the vessel? What I was thinking was that they just let it get to the point where it dissolved, but then they took it away before it boiled.
Oh, maybe never really dissolved. It was always like hanging out. Fat was always like, you know, the way we clean the fat of chicken soup, it's always like that. So fat, the piece was on top, and then just like the way in the fire, these fires were wood and this and that, like the spark flame went up on the side of the cauldron and heated up there that side, and the thing got stuck
I get
there.
it.
So
Okay.
it never really
Okay.
separated.
So basically there was fat that was on the top of the pot, and it got heated right in that spot without the pot boiling, without the. Okay.
And so it stayed as one
Yeah.
side.
Okay.
There was no point.
Okay.
describes later about
Okay. So the Isa Kula Gabi Adadi, because everything is all together. Okay, Amalei Ravina Ravashi. So when we're looking still for an answer, do we say that there is nitzuk pouring by food? Ravina says to Ravashi Tashma, Bishamir Rafa Mikshal Grisen, Bishal Pull, Bipnei Shehin Solden Lachareim. Bishamai says that the same thing would apply. Bishamai says the same thing would apply to the porridge, right? To this split pea porridge, to this legumes. That because there's these strings that go back, so we think that the Tanakama says, look, it's also about, we would also accept strings. It's just, Tanakama says it's because of that you have a lot of strings by the honey. But and by this one, you have a few strings. So Tanakama doesn't hold that a few strings is going to work. Bishamai says even a few strings is going to work. But according to the Tanakama, you need a lot of strings for it to work. So that's why it only works by honey. And if that's the case, you need a lot of strings. So by the food, you don't have the strings. It says midi area hasamisham desmich and achamisham riri. It says you're mixing two things together. What's the Yiddish expression? Barsht with something. You're mixing barsht. What's happening here is that Beishamai holds that the issue is strings, but Tanakama never held that there was any issue of strings. They just held because it was thick. And if it's thick, so the food is also thick. So it comes out exactly the opposite. That by food that dissolved, if it's still thick, it still would be nitzuk, because the Tanakama holds it is nitzuk by the honey. And the reason for the honey, according to what we're saying now, is not because of the strings, it's because of its viscosity. Okay, the next piece of the Mishnah said, Valmali Tarvid Rekev, if it's a spoonful of dust from the corpse, that means that it, instead of dissolving, it disintegrated into dust. And if there's a spoonful of this dust, so then that would give off tumah as well, that the Nazir would have to restart his count. Well, Kama Shiure, the Gemara says, what's the shear of the spoon?
This is Harry's stuff.
The Harry. Yeah. Yeah, that was because he was cremated. This is talking about it was dissolved. It was not. Okay. It was not dissolved, disintegrate. So Chizkiya Amar Mali pieces of yad, that it's a handful, a palmful. Chizkiya is the son of Reb Chia, I think, right? Does Reb Chia have two sons? Is that Chizkiya or is that Rebbe's son? Rebbe had a son. Reb Chia has a son, Chizkiya and Yehuda. And Rebbe's sons was Rabbi Gamliel and Reb Shimon. So Chizkiya is the son of Reb Chia, and he's a friend of Rabbi Yochanan. So there's a machlekes here, Chizkiya and Rabbi Yochanan. Chizkiya says the size of the spoon is the size of the palm, and Rabbi Yochanan says it's the size of two palms, like this. Yeah, that's what it seems like when you hold it like this. Malay chafna. Well, Tanan, take a look at this Mishnah. Mali Tarvid Rekiv Shamro, Yeshnan mi Ikaret Spaisav Lamaila Dibra Meir, Vachamay Malay chafna. We have a machlekes, what the tarvid is. One says it's from the base of the fingers until the top of the fingers, from the knuckles, from the joint until the top of the fingers. The other one says that it's the hands together. Well, the Gemara says, Bishlam Rabbi Yochanan, we understand Rabbi Yochanan, the hands together. That's exactly what the Rabbanan say. So Rabbi Yochanan has a good support. Ela Chizkiya command, but Chizkiya that said that it's the palm, the only other opinion that we have is the fingers. So who does he hold like? Like Rabbi Meir, like Rabbanan. Gemara says, Amri, let's say like this. Mali pieces of yad, the Malikish writes to the Malachat Shiro. What's contained in the palm and what's contained in the fingers is the same size. So Chizkiya is talking about that it's what's contained in the palm, but he's really following the opinion of Reb Meir, which is what's contained in the fingers. Who gave this answer? This was Mimai. Simbarabba says to Rav Papa, Mimai. How do you know that this is the case? The Haimi Kishretz Baisa V'Lamaila L'Roish. Maybe it's talking about when you said from the edges of the fingers, from the joint until the end, until the top. How do you know it's going this way? Maybe it's going this way. And it's exact. It's not that this and this is the same size, that the fingers and the palm are the same size. What it meant was from here to here, which is exactly the palm. But how big the fingers are, we're not even just talking about. How do you know that you just figured out like this, the size of the fingers is the same size as the palm? Maybe Dilma Lamata midi day. Is it Lamata midi yade or midi day? The Havali Mali Pisayad. Let me see the vowels. No, it's midi day. Maybe it's below, which is talking about the below it or below him. They would be below him, huh? Below it. So it's talking about below it, which is exactly the palm, exactly what it says. Now the Gemara over here says teku, but teku would only be where you have a halachic question. We have to wait for. Here the commentators take it out. There's no. You just leave it at that. That he has a question.
Take out.
Yeah. The commentators here take out the teku.
Oh.
The Gra takes it out. Take out the take-out.
Have a good day.
Have a good day. Hatzlacha.
Thanks.
There's a different kind of physics called non-Newtonian physics that gives with mudslides.
Oh, really?
Because the-
Thank you.
Have a good day.
with water.